Hey, what's going on? So I'm a little late on this one, but I tried to do a little homework on what it is because it's not minor at all. So, Wayfair has been more or less accused, it's the word I'll use, of being involved in the sex trafficking business. There was a discovery, don't know who discovered it, probably a random human, just scrolling, uh, went on their site, and basically what they found was several appliances grossly, ridiculously overpriced, uh, named after individuals who have been missing, young girls who've been missing. So, for an example, picking a random name out here, you got a refrigerator priced at $11,000 on Wayfair, and they've named the refrigerator Kamaya or something like that. Uh, and then you'll look and you'll scroll down and you'll see that exact same refrigerator at a different price, $10,000, and its name is Shantae or something like that. They're just examples of names. I didn't. These are not real people in my mind. I'm just picking names out of a hat. And please forgive me if someone is named either one of those names who happen to be missing. But that's not my intention. What I'm trying to say is this is what they discovered. These are the different things, and they found several different um, posts like this. I think it was like 4 or 5 of them that they found, all named after girls that are missing. And the the problem, well, the whole thing is a problem. But what I'm trying to say is, to me, it looks, and I'm just going by my gut, it looks like this was deliberate. Like this was something that someone wanted someone to see. And I know in a business like that, snitching is not an option. Like, it's not an option. Everybody involved goes to jail or gets the death penalty. So you know if you snitch, um, the consequences are grave for not only yourself but for probably everyone you know. Like that's how dark that world is. So if anything, if someone got cold feet or decided enough is enough or just got it in their mind for whatever their own interest that they want to blow this whole business up, this is a way they can do it anonymously and effectively, um, from the inside. And that's what this feels like to me. It feels like somebody wanted to blow it up. Someone wanted to expose them, and was afraid to just come out and go to the FBI and say, "Yo, this is what we know. This is what we have." But rather, let me just put some blatant puzzle out here that a very smart 15-year-old could figure out, and then they'll discover it, and then the whole thing will come down, and no one will ever look for who posted this because it's all anonymous, and it's just that's what it is. So that's my theory. I could be dead wrong, but it just feels deliberate. It feels like someone on the inside just wanted to bring an end to this, and I'm hopeful that I'm right, and I'm hopeful that they were successful. With the world being as it is, everyone's paying close attention to human rights and how people are being treated, and we're opening our minds and hearts to try to attack certain things that we've been kind of asleep about. And sex trafficking is one of those things. Um, Child abuse of all different kinds. It's just time to start attacking these issues and start bringing justice to some of these names and all of these names if possible. Um, and that's what it is. So, Wayfair, needless to say, I'm not ordering anything from you guys. They've come out and since said that they don't involve themselves in what individual users are doing. They're just a platform, so it's like Craigslist or something like that. You can sell your own property on there. Um, and my thing is, well, I mean, the way my brain works, I just look at it and say, well, that's an easy out. Obviously, you guys created Wayfair to sell to sex traffic, and this was your out by making it user friendly. That's how my mind works. I'm not giving them no pass for that. I just assume that was the plan from the beginning. Um, but at the end of the day, it's like this. This is a serious problem in this world, not just in our country, but all over the world. People are being swooped up, girls, young boys, all ages. They're being swooped up for either sex trafficking, organ trafficking, all kinds of different things that people do use others for. Billionaire games. We know that there's an underworld out there, and it's time for them to be exposed. So this is where we're at. This is what's happening in the world. I think it's one of those situations where we've lived in a society for so long where we just know certain things are going on and you just don't do anything about it. Those are the things that we're deciding to do something about. I think that's just where this generation is. All that stuff that are past generations just don't look, don't tell, see no evil, hear no evil. Their grandkids are like, nah, we were exposing all this. We don't want to live in a world where there's underworld perks of evil that people can just enjoy. The kids don't want to have nothing to do with that. They want an on the surface world that is tangible, that is safe, and that treats everyone equally. And they're not waiting to see if it's okay to move against these entities. And that's what it feels like, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I hate the fact that I come from a society, from a generation that was silent, complicit, happily oblivious, and in this space of mind where things could be and could not be, so you just don't address it. Yeah, I'm glad that's going away. I'm very happy that that's going away. Because all my life I've lived in Hollywood and I've heard about stuff. You know what I mean? You just hear about stuff your whole life. And you don't take it seriously because you don't know enough to know enough. You know what I mean? It's like, for example, you hear about people blood sacrificing children in Hollywood. Like, that's a big thing. But where would I go to stop that from happening? Where would I go to... How do I attack that? That's just a figment of my imagination if I'm to listen to people who tell me not to pay any attention to conspiracy theories. And yet, if there's any, and I mean any chance that this is happening, obviously it needs to not be, right? So someone needs to attack it. Someone needs to try to dig up all the bones that these folks is hiding so that we can have justice for the people who deserve justice. And I'll say this too. A lot of what our forefathers were about and the things that they did and the way that they treated everyone and the way that they kind of turned the other cheek to certain wrongdoings being done to their left, to me, it just looks like they didn't know what we know now about the human brain, about various circumstances that create trauma and how to be compassionate against that trauma, mental illness and how mental illness is brought about, how people can find themselves being, completely and utterly demented, and the pain and the structure, the lack thereof, that can cause people to turn into monsters. And you just want to prevent all of that. You want to try to make this a safe place so that kids don't get abducted, so that women don't feel unsafe in the presence of men, and etc. You just kind of don't want to just complain about this stuff. You want to get to the root of these issues, dig that root up, and burn it. Like, that's what we're on, and it's a great thing to be a part of. And there's going to be a lot of resistance to this, and a lot of the what's going on is being covered up by people with power and money, and that's why it's so incredibly important that the Pizzagate scandals of the world and all this stuff that's going on with this trafficking of all different sorts gets the attention that it's getting now, and continues to be something that we focus on until we figure it out. And we're going to have to do some outside of the box thinking to make the world a safer place for people. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of people to get on board, a lot of evolution of thought for people to kind of come around to step away from their understanding of structuring law, to kind of mold the laws that we go revote for going forward to kind of fit the world that we want to find ourselves in. Because what I've come to realize after 35 years of life is that the way we've been doing things does not necessarily deter the behavior. The whole cops arrest the bad guy goes to court, has his day in court, goes to jail to either die or go to jail for a long extended period of time. That doesn't work. People are continuing to do the same things over and over again. Time is passing and criminals are still making the same decision. Eventually, we have to get to the root of why the circumstances are as they are. The environment itself needs to be worked on. That's what we need to focus on. The environment, the circumstances from which these occurrences take place. How do we fix the room so that it's spacious enough for all of us to fit in? How do we make it so that the room itself creates an opportunity for people to feel comfortable within it? I think that's what we're looking at. We're looking at America, our country, particularly America, as a perfectly good room with old furnishing, you know what I mean, that needs to be updated. Old technology that needs to be updated. And it just seems like the people who live there don't want to get rid of anything. They want to hoard all of the old stuff. They want the world that they've lived in for all this time to continue to be the same world that they've been in. But the problem is, the room that you're in is not the only room in the house. And there are other rooms in this that make up this world, other countries and other nations that are evolving, and we need to evolve as well if we're going to continue to be a leader amongst nations. And that's the bottom line. We can't continue to keep doing stuff the same way over and over again if it's not deterring the behavior that we want to stop. And we understand that the prison system and the way it's set up doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to deter behavior, but rather just keep a control over certain behavior while they allow themselves opportunities to continue doing stuff the wrong way. And that is why we're not evolving like we're supposed to. That is why we have a large facet of this country that doesn't want to embrace change, because the changes that they have are going to force them to stop doing things the way that they should never have been doing them in the first place. Because it never worked. It was never meant for everybody to thrive. And most importantly, it's time. It's just time to stop being the old way we were. Evolution is necessary. We are not the only room in the house. And that's what I got to say to America. Trying to make America great again means that you're trying to go backwards in evolution. And that is not productive. In fact, that's the complete opposite. And that's pretty much what I got, man. I hope that people are continuing to believe in something better than what they've known. It doesn't have to continue to be the way that it was in order for you to be comfortable. You can embrace comfort and find a new happiness, a better happiness, if you allow yourself that opportunity. And I think this country needs a lot of therapy as a whole. We need to talk some things out. I think some people are in denial about some things. I think some people are projecting some things. I think some people are looking at one another and saying, you're not as important as I am. And I think some people are looking at one another and saying, I would just rather not be around you, but I can't get rid of you. And it's starting to become a pressure cooker that is boiling to the top. And I think that's where we're headed if we don't stop, look at ourselves, listen to one another, and sometimes just give a crap about some stuff that has nothing to do with us. Because everybody who's self-serving, self-motivated to only help themselves, etc., and their own people, you're just not going to get far in a world that must coincide with one another. It can't just be about you. And that goes for all of us. I'm not excluding nobody in that regard. And there's a question that I also must ask, and I should probably make another video, but are we asking too much of one another? Are we asking too much of one another? We definitely feel like too much is being asked of us. And when I say us, I mean just about everybody I listen to is saying you're asking too much. Black folks are, from my perspective, are saying, white people, you're asking us to continue to appreciate something that we was never supposed to appreciate. You're asking us to sit in circumstances that were meant for some of us to never get out of. You want us to continue to be okay with bad treatment and not react to poor treatment with animosity and frustration and etc. That's too much to ask. We've embodied the pain and the frustration of our facts, of the truth that we know, which is that we have been mistreated, that we have been marginalized, that we have been belittled, we've been made fun of, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we embrace that pain, not because of anything that we can specifically point at, but just because individuals absorb these type of things in a way that's not positive. regardless of who they are. You know, some people have a victim mentality and embrace that and find strength in that position. Others want to deny that altogether and find strength in coinciding and assimilating in such a way that makes them non-threatening. Others just find themselves just trying to live their lives, and they're frustrated by the fact that things are not set up in such a way for them to look as if they're trying to display themselves a certain way, but rather look like how they've been grouped based on societal norms that just simply aren't normal, making black people out to look like thugs and hooligans, blaming them for issues that they didn't systematically put together and things of that nature. You're just asking too much of us to sit back and not complain, but then watch videos like the one that we've seen of George Floyd getting murdered. You want us to sit back and act like the police force is just for us when we have so many of these instances that continue to pile up without justice. I mean, you're asking too much of us. That's what we're saying. That's what I'm saying. And then I listen to people on the other side. They're saying you're asking too much of us. You want us to turn against our families, turn against all of our friends, turn against the culture that we've known all of our lives. You want us to care about you while not receiving the energy that you use, the same energy for our lives that you feel for your own. We don't understand your positioning, and we don't like the fact that you continue to make things disruptive for us. We want to live in a comfortable world. We have our privilege, we have our passions, we have our money, we have our land, we have peace, and the only thing that's disrupting us is your complaining asses. All you do is complain over and over again. We continue to give you what we have. We're not going to hate ourselves for what we did to you. We won the fight. Shut up and live with it. I've been hearing that side of the story the whole time. I've been listening to you. You know, you're telling us that we don't take responsibility for what it is that we do. We kill each other every single day and don't make as much of a fuss about it until someone white does it. Or we sit back and we continue to pour bad stuff into our systems, eat bad foods, continue to do bad, feel bad, and then want y'all to come help us with free health care and free this and help us with that. There are a large facet of our people that don't work as hard as we should, and it's a lot of people that don't like that. And I listen. Maybe we're asking too much of you not to say a word that we say to one another every day. Maybe it's not fair to say, just because these things happen to you, to me, that I should be given a right to say something derogatory to my brother, but dare someone else say it, it's a problem. But if I say it to them, it's a term of endearment. So long as they don't say it back to me, it's not fair. And the fact that the scales aren't balanced is clear to me. But to most of the individuals who have these retorts, they're not interested in the scales because they're only interested in how they feel. They're not interested in whether or not my grandfather was treated poorly, so therefore I feel like I have a right to be treated poorly. What does that have to do with them and how they feel, and why don't I care about their feelings if they want me to care so much about theirs? I listen. I hear you. You know what I mean? And I think that's what we need to do. Even though we don't appreciate the positions that one another is speaking, it's very important that we hear it. It's very important that we understand the points of views. It's very important. Because if we're going to get anywhere, we got to understand what we're looking at. You know, I hear a lot of people in regards to this situation. They're confused about the position that we're taking completely. You know, I bring up Black Lives Matter. They bring up an organization about money, money going to the DNC, and then it becomes a fight about parties. I don't care about the party, dude. I don't care about your political parties. I don't even feel like I'm a part of this country in that regard. So it's like, why would I? You know what I mean? It's a misunderstanding that the African American harbors some type of allegiance to a particular party. Most of us who are in this fight, we don't even pledge allegiances to parties. We don't view the political system the way that you do. We don't have a whole lot of faith in it. That's why we're trying to see it change as a whole. We're not interested in hugging one arm and giving the finger to the other. I mean, they're both limbs on the same body. You know what I mean? And that's how I think the average freedom fighting African American of 2020 is thinking these days. I mean, like, it's a lot of retorts about how the Republican Party was the party that freed the slaves, that the Democratic Party was started upon racism and things of that nature. But that was the past. That's not what's being represented in today. society. The images that we're seeing is the complete opposite. Not to say that we align with either, but I've heard a lot of the retorts from people who are on the conservative side telling me not to trust the Democrats, and I'm like, don't you worry, bro, because we don't. But don't try to tell me that you're for us, because very honestly, it's pretty obvious that your party is the party that's been the racist party for a little over 2 decades now, if not more. You don't have to like it. It is what it is. Fox News, they're not Democrats, bro. Your president, clearly, not a Democrat. And he's definitely not on the side of Black Lives Matter. And that's another thing. I think a lot of times since we've lived in this society of turn the other cheek while things are bad going on to the left of us, that a lot of us in our society have chosen that as opposed to want to fight against that. Some people would like to continue that. And I think that facet of society feels structurally safe within the confines of an imbalanced system. And they are worried that if the system becomes balanced, they will lose the privilege that they have and the circumstances that they had, and they have worked too hard to see it go to waste just so some black person can feel good about living in their country. That's their point of view. They don't feel us is worth the inconvenience of seeing a change that is uncertain. What happens to their kids? What happens to their trust funds? What happens to what it is, their generational wealth, if they have to divvy it out to me and mine? You know, what happens if reparations are paid? Then where does that leave them? And a lot of people are afraid of what the answer is, what that looks like. So they will sacrifice what we would consider fair treatment towards blacks, of whom they don't feel supports them anyway, for the sake of the comfort of a continuing society as it is. And then it becomes a question about whether or not that's right or wrong. The answer is yes, that's wrong. Why? Because you're justifying behavior that is not good toward people to help serve your own comfort. It's wrong. It's not right. And not only that, but a lot of times they will justify this by lumping certain African Americans as all African Americans, and therefore none of those African Americans deserve the treatment that they ask for because they think of all of us as that. So for example, like this, if I'm to say, and this is a hypothetical and it's not something I approve of in any way, but if I were to say, we're not going to save white people's lives because all of them are KKKs, that's essentially what is being said to us in regards to Black Lives Matter and the retorts against it. Because, well, we're not going to give those black people nothing because they do this, and they kill themselves, and all these different reasons for not helping black people, when really black people make up everything. So if you're talking about them, yes, we're them too, but you're also negating to understand and pay attention to the fact that there are many people who are black, who are the opposite of what it is that you describe, and they too need to be treated fairly. So you're wrong for mistreating them. And neglecting to acknowledge their existence does not negate the fact that you're wrong for not supporting something that goes against the mistreatment of individuals, regardless if they're black, white, or what have you. And I told this to some people a few days ago online. If your true north isn't the treatment, the fair treatment of living beings, you've been misled somewhere. You've been misled. If your end goal is not fair treatment of living beings, you've been misled somewhere. And I think a good portion of this world has been misled. I really do. I think a lot of people have chosen a lot of different things over the fair treatment of living beings. And the reason why I phrase it living beings is because systematically, culturally, emotionally, mentally, there are a large portion of individuals who truly believe that some human beings are subhuman to them, and that gives them, in their in their minds, the right to mistreat those people. That must be disarmed. If you truly, deeply believe that you are greater than the next living being, or that you are that other living being is subhuman, that still gives you no right to approve of the mistreatment of that being. None. No right. And the only exception I give to that is insects and bacteria, for obvious reasons. But aside from that, nah. You don't get to look at me and say I'm a subhuman, so therefore I deserve to be in chains. That is off thinking on two different levels. But the level we can't allow is the one where you allow the mistreatment. So that's why you phrase it living beings, because calling everyone human, some people will be like, okay, yeah, that's cool, but we don't see them as human, so we're going to keep doing what we do. Nah, we're disarming that. Any living, breathing entity deserves to be treated fairly. Deserves to not be eradicated, deserves to not be malnourished, deserves not to be systematically oppressed or anything of that nature. Period. And if you believe otherwise, you've been misled. You've been lied to. You've been put into a position to where you and the teachings that you pass on are going to leave you with a horrible reputation, horrible karma, and ultimately your own destruction. That's where you're headed. And history will show you that everyone who's done what you've done have found that same fate. So, with that being said, my name is BDF44. Thank you for listening. I'm out.